The world is not broken. It is working exactly as it was designed. If you are exhausted, if you are working until your eyes burn and your spirit feels fractured, and yet you're standing in the exact same financial position you were in 3 years ago, you are not dealing with a glitch. You are dealing with a law so cold, so absolute, and so invisible that most of the population lives and fades without ever seeing it. They believe the lie, the great comforting lie that has been whispered into your ear since you were old enough to sit in a classroom. The lie that says, if you work hard, you will be rewarded. If you are good, you will be safe. If you follow the rules, the system will take care of you. Look around you. Look at the tired faces in transit. Look at the brilliant men and women drowning in debt. Look at the people who have done everything right and are still one emergency away from collapse. Does the system look like it rewards virtue? Does money look like it follows sweat? No, money does not follow effort. It does not follow goodness. It does not follow talent. Money follows position. This is the Robert Greene law of position, and it is the reason the wealthy keep advancing while others simply grow exhausted. The wealthy do not necessarily work harder than you. In fact, many of them work far less. They do not possess some divine spark of intelligence you lack. They simply occupy a different coordinate in the geometry of power. They are standing upstream. You are standing downstream. And in a universe governed by gravity, no amount of swimming, no amount of praying, and no amount of hustle can force the river to flow backward. Most people spend their entire lives fighting physics. They cup their hands at the bottom of the waterfall, hoping to catch enough water to survive, wondering why the flow is so violent, why it crushes them. They never look up. They never see that the person at the top has simply built a dam. That person is not cupping their hands. They are directing the flow. They are not working against the water. They have positioned themselves so that the water works for them. If you want to change your financial reality, you do not need more discipline. You do not need to wake up at 4 a.m. You do not need to grind until you break. You need to stop moving. You need to look at the map. And you need to understand that you are fighting a war from the bottom of a hill against an opponent who owns the high ground. Today we are going to dismantle the illusion of meritocracy. We are going to perform an autopsy on the concept of hard work. And we are going to look at the world through the eyes of Robert Greene, not as a moralist but as an architect. I am going to show you why you are stuck. Not to hurt you, but because the only way to escape a prison is to see the bars. To understand why you are losing, you must understand the difference between creation and capture. This is the fundamental disconnect that keeps brilliant people financially trapped. Society teaches you to be a creator. You are taught to build skills, to create value, to be useful. Be the best engineer, be the best writer, be the best doctor. Be the best employee. We idolize creation. We worship the value-add mindset. But the economic machine does not reward creation. It rewards capture. Creation is the act of generating energy. Capture is the act of harnessing it. Think of a hydroelectric dam. The water in the river is the energy. It is the raw talent, the labor, the movement of the masses. The water creates the force. But the water does not get paid. The dam gets paid. The dam sits still. It is immovable. It is heavy. It does not work in the sense that the water works. It simply exists. It occupies a strategic choke point where the water has no choice but to pass through it. By virtue of its position, the dam captures the value generated by the river. You are the river. You are the force. You are the one rushing, moving, wearing yourself down against the rocks, generating the power that lights cities. But because you do not own the choke point, you do not capture the value. You merely pass through the system, leaving your energy behind. This is why the wealthy continue expanding. They are not the water. They are the dam. They focus their energy on acquiring and holding strategic positions where value must flow. Once they have the position, the accumulation becomes automatic. It becomes structural. It requires no constant emotional effort, no daily motivational speeches, no repeated bursts of willpower. Robert Greene has often shown that modern society convinces people that skill is everything. We tell children, get good grades, master a skill, become undeniable. We sell the fantasy that if you are skilled enough, the world will bend the knee. This is the skill trap. You see it everywhere. The brilliant artist who is financially struggling, the genius programmer who is underpaid, the hard-working healthcare worker who can barely cover expenses. They have immense skill. They have character. But the darker truth is this: skill without position is wasted. Talent is meaningless in a vacuum. A master swordsman is useless if he is standing in a room where the battle is decided by entirely different weapons. A brilliant orator is silent if he is standing in a room with no audience. The wealthy do not obsess over skill alone. They obsess over positioning. They obsess over placing themselves on terrain where their smallest actions have massive consequences. They understand that position multiplies skill. Let's do the math of your life. Outcome equals skill plus effort times position. If your position is 0 or near 0, it doesn't matter if your skill and effort are 100. The tragedy of the working class is not lack of effort. It is multiplying effort by structural weakness. They are increasing their skill. They are doubling their effort. They are burning out, but they are multiplying it by a structural 0. They are digging in the middle of the desert, hoping to find water simply because they are good diggers. The wealthy identify the spring first. They may be less skilled. They may use fewer resources. They may work for only a fraction of the time. But because their position is right, because they are standing on the water, they win. This drives the moralist insane. It's not fair, they scream. He's lazy. He doesn't deserve it. But the market is not a moral judge. The market is a mechanism. It does not ask who worked harder. It asks where value is being captured. And here is the hardest pill to swallow. The system punishes you for your reliance on skill. Why? Because skill is difficult to scale. It is tied to your time. It is tied to your physical body. If you are the best surgeon in the world, you can still only help one patient at a time. Your position is limited by biology. The owner of the hospital, however, does not need to perform the procedures. He needs to position the hospital in a wealthy district, negotiate contracts and hire people like you. His position is scalable. Yours is not. As long as you pride yourself solely on hard work, you are locking yourself into a cage. You are wearing your exhaustion like a badge of honor. I worked 80 hours this week. To the Robert Greene mindset, that is not a boast. That is a confession of strategic failure. It means you had to use 80 units of energy to achieve a result that someone in a better position achieved with a single conversation. It means you are inefficient. It means you are fighting gravity. Stop being proud of your suffering. Suffering is not a currency. The bank does not accept your sweat. Let's go deeper into the psychology that keeps you downstream. Why do most people refuse to move? Why do they cling to low-leverage positions even when they understand the math? Because the bottom is crowded and crowds feel safe. There is psychological comfort in being part of the struggle. When you are a worker, you have camaraderie. You have a shared enemy, the boss, the system, the economy. You have a script. You know what you are supposed to do. Show up, do the work, go home, complain. Moving upstream requires stepping into uncertainty. To change your position, you must leave the herd. You must step away from the comforting illusion of fairness. You must accept that the world is cold, structural, and indifferent. Most people would rather remain financially stuck and morally superior, then become structurally responsible for changing their position. They love the narrative of the underdog. We love stories where the scrappy outsider defeats the powerful system through heart and grit. We love it because it validates our illusion. It tells us that position does not matter, only spirit does. But in the real world, the underdog usually loses. In the real world, Goliath overwhelms David most of the time because Goliath has reach, armor, and mass. The wealthy do not play the underdog. They play the house. They understand that wealth is not a battle, it is a siege. You do not rush out emotionally and fight. You build walls. You control supply lines. You wait. This requires a fundamental shift in how you view yourself. You must stop seeing yourself as a worker and start seeing yourself as an allocator of assets. Even if you have no money, you still have time, attention, and energy. These are assets. Most people allocate these assets into labor. They sell them wholesale. The outlier allocates them into leverage. They spend their time building systems that can work for them. They spend their energy securing relationships, which are simply access to other people's positions. They spend their attention identifying cracks in the system where value is leaking so they can place themselves strategically underneath. This is the concept of strategic laziness. Bill Gates did not write every line of code for Windows. He positioned himself between IBM and the operating system. He captured the license. He owned the toll booth. Rockefeller did not drill every barrel of oil. He bought the refineries. He realized that the drillers were the gamblers. They could fail completely, but if they succeeded, they still needed refinement. He positioned himself at the bottleneck. He controlled the flow. This is the secret. Find the bottleneck. In every industry, in every market, in every career path, there is a bottleneck. There is a point where the flow of value is constrained. In the gold rush, it was not the gold. It was the shovels. In the internet age, the bottleneck was not the content. It was the search engine. In the creator economy, the bottleneck is not the talent. It is the algorithm. Attention. If you are the content creator, you are the water. If you are the platform, you are the dam. Ask yourself right now, where do I stand in relation to the bottleneck of my industry? Am I the one trying to squeeze through the narrow opening? Or am I the one standing at the gate charging a toll? If you are trying to squeeze through, you will always be exhausted. You will always be competing because everyone is trying to squeeze through. The law of position states, competition is for those who cannot build structural advantage. And structural advantage is born from position. So why haven't you moved? It is not just because you didn't know. It is because the system has placed 3 invisible tripwires to keep you stationary. These are the psychological traps that ensure the wealthy keep advancing, while the busy remain occupied. Trap 1, the sunk cost of identity. You have spent years building an identity around your suffering. You call yourself a grinder. You pride yourself on endurance. To move positions, you must eliminate that version of yourself. You must admit that much of your hard work was a misallocation of energy. The ego hates this. The ego would rather be right and financially trapped than wrong and strategically free. You cling to your degree because you spent years earning it, even if it leads to a dead-end position. You cling to your industry because it feels familiar, even if the industry is declining. The wealthy have little emotional loyalty to their past. They have loyalty to future positioning. If a position is no longer advantageous, they abandon it. They are fluid. They move where leverage exists. Trap 2, the salary addiction. A salary is one of the most effective behavioral sedatives ever created. The system pays you just enough to weaken your ambition, but not enough to purchase freedom. It provides a predictable drip of comfort. 2 weeks paycheck. 2 weeks paycheck. This rhythm conditions you. It makes you fear the irregularity of ownership. Wealth is uneven. It arrives in droughts and then in floods. To change positions, you must tolerate the drought long enough to build the dam for the flood. But the salary addict cannot handle the withdrawal. They need the predictable hit. So they remain in the position of the employee, trading long-term potential for a finite drip of security. 3. The illusion of risk. You are told that moving upstream is dangerous. Starting a business is dangerous. Investing is dangerous. Negotiating for ownership is dangerous. So you remain in the so-called safe position. But examine reality. Who is more exposed? The person who owns the stream or the person who depends on drinking from it? If the stream dries up, the owner moves to another stream. He has the map. He understands the terrain. The dependent one is left with nothing. Employment is often the riskiest position of all because you operate with a single point of failure. One boss, one company, one industry. If that connection breaks, your leverage collapses. The wealthy continue advancing because they diversify positions. They establish multiple channels of control. They have multiple dams on multiple rivers. They redefine safety not as predictability but as control. You think safety is a steady paycheck. They know safety is owning the mechanism that issues the paycheck. So how do we begin the migration? How do we move from downstream struggle to upstream capture? We must stop thinking in terms of career ladders. Ladders are for climbing vertically inside someone else's structure. We are not climbing. We are traversing. We are moving laterally from high-effort, low-leverage zones into low-effort, high-leverage zones. This requires a new map, a hierarchy of leverage. Most people think the hierarchy is intern, junior, senior manager, vice president, CEO. That is the hierarchy of the farm, just different levels of livestock. The executive may wear a better suit than the intern, but both are still inside the same structure, still exchanging time for outcomes. The real hierarchy of wealth is invisible to the corporate ladder. Level 1, the laborer, the time seller. You sell time, zero leverage, paid only when you exert effort. Level 2, the merchant, the transaction maker. You sell products or outcomes. Slight leverage. You can earn while inactive, but still manage operations, sourcing, and delivery. Trap 3, the architect, the system owner. You own the code, the media, the patent, or the process. The product replicates itself. Your leverage becomes detached from your marginal effort. Level 4, the capitalist, the resource allocator. You move capital towards structures that multiply it. You do not touch the product. You do not touch the customer. You touch the framework itself. The goal of your life must be to migrate upward through this hierarchy. And here is the brutal truth. You cannot simply work harder from level 1 and somehow arrive at level 4. You cannot labor your way into becoming a capitalist. You have to shift categories. You have to change the nature of your income, not merely the amount. A doctor earning $500,000 a year at level 1 is still more structurally trapped than a software owner earning far less at level 3. Why? Because the doctor is dependent on continued personal output. His income is a golden handcuff. He must keep performing to keep earning. The software owner is structurally freer. His income is a seed that can compound. He has time to think, reposition, and eventually move to level 4. The wealthy advance because they understand the economics of time. They buy back their time as early as possible. They use their first meaningful gains to purchase freedom. Then they use that freedom to create more leverage. Most people use increased income to purchase comfort, a better car to drive to the job that drains them, a larger house to recover between exhausting cycles. They use money to decorate the cage. The wealthy use money to acquire the key. This is the fundamental difference in position, the consumer versus the owner. So how do you move from the bottom of the pyramid toward the top? How do you shift from the one pushing the boulder to the one who owns the mountain? You do not ask for permission. You do not wait for promotion. Promotions are often the incentives the structure offers to keep you inside it. Instead of building your own, you must use the vacuum strategy. Robert Greene understood that power is rarely handed over. It flows into empty spaces. If you want to capture value, find a void in the system, a problem with urgency, a need with no satisfying solution, a gap no one has claimed. Then position yourself directly in that void. If you know the 3 people that a billionaire needs to meet, you are effectively wealthy by proximity. If you control the newsletter that 10,000 buyers read, you influence the sales of every product in that niche. You do not need to build the product. You need to control the audience. Stop trying to be the genius inventor. Be the person who introduces the inventor to the investor. Be the person who connects the audience to the offer. Position yourself at the intersection. Picture a busy intersection in a city. You do not need to build the cars. You do not need to pave the roads. You simply need to be the one who owns the billboard. The traffic is already there. The energy is already flowing. You are simply capturing a percentage by standing in the right place. This requires a complete shift in focus. From how do I work harder to who controls attention and where is the flow moving. Attention is the oil of the 21st century. Whoever controls the flow of attention influences the flow of money. If you are writing code in isolation, you are labor. If you are deciding which product gets visibility, you are a gatekeeper. Always seek the gate. The final barrier you must break is your understanding of risk. The financially trapped fear losing what little they have. The strategically positioned fear missing what they could build. This difference in psychology creates entirely different outcomes. One clings to the shoreline. The other builds the ship. To change your position, you must invert your relationship with uncertainty. You must realize that standing still is often the most dangerous move available. In a rapidly changing economy, the so-called safe job can become a silent countdown. Automation, AI, and structural shifts are eroding the bottom of the pyramid. The water is rising. If you remain downstream, you remain exposed. The only durable safety is elevation. Robert Greene has often shown through modern power dynamics that the world yields to those who move with conviction, not those who wait endlessly for certainty. The universe does not reward hesitation. It quietly punishes the timid. If you are waiting for a guarantee, you will wait until opportunity has completely passed you by. There are no guarantees in the law of position. There are only probabilities, and the probability of becoming financially free while permanently trading time for money is structurally close to zero. The probability of building wealth through ownership, leverage, and upstream positioning is not 100%, but it is one of the only arenas where the mechanics actually favor compounding. You have to place a bet. You have to bet on yourself, not on your willingness to simply work harder. Everyone can exhaust themselves. That is not rare. You have to bet on your ability to see clearly, to read the terrain, to identify the high ground, and to move before everyone else notices what actually matters. When you finally shift your position, something strange happens. You stop being chronically tired. The exhaustion that has followed you for years, the sensation of pushing a stalled vehicle uphill, begins to disappear. Suddenly, you are no longer dragging the system. You are directing momentum within it. You may still work long hours, perhaps even harder than before, but the friction changes because now your effort compounds instead of disappearing. Every hour you work begins building a structure that can continue generating value tomorrow. You are no longer renting your life. You are building equity inside it. The resentment starts dissolving. You stop looking at wealthy people with emotional bitterness and start looking at them with structural understanding. You begin to see the mechanics for what they are. It was never personal. It was architecture. You realize that you were never inherently not good enough. You were standing in the wrong position. It is like finding the light switch in a dark room after years of stumbling into walls. You thought you lacked ability. You thought you were clumsy. But the environment itself was working against you. Position is the switch. Flip it. Move from labor toward leverage. Move from downstream toward upstream. Move from competing toward structural dominance. Robert Greene's lesson in modern strategic terms is brutally simple. Do not be structurally invisible. Financial struggle is often the condition of being ignored by the market. Wealth is the condition of becoming essential to it. Your task, starting today, is to audit your life with cold precision. Look at your income source. Is it leverageable? Look at your daily tasks. Are you building a dam or still carrying water? Look at your industry. Where is the bottleneck? If you cannot answer these questions, you are vulnerable. The strategist always knows the terrain better than the distracted participant. You must become the strategist of your own future. You must claim the high ground because the water is rising, and only those with position remain above it. But once you secure the position, once resources begin accumulating, a new danger appears. A danger far more subtle and far more destructive than financial struggle. Most people think wealth ends the conflict. They are wrong. Wealth simply changes the battlefield. Once you wear the crown, everyone wants access to it. The wolves do not disappear. They simply change their masks. They arrive as friends. They arrive as romantic partners. They arrive as business allies. How do you protect the fortress once you have built it? How do you identify the traitor already inside the walls? That is the art of Robert Greene-style defense. And it is a shadow game very few navigate successfully. We will discuss that next time. If you're still here, you're not like the others. Subscribe if you haven't.